Okay, so we're diving into a story today that is, well, it's really messed up, to be honest.
Yeah, this one is it's definitely got some twists and turns that you don't see coming.
It all starts with something so ordinary, like just a simple WhatsApp message.
Exactly. Like something we all do every day, just chatting back and forth, making plans, whatever.
But then the thing is, in this case, the person sending those messages, well, they were already dead.
Murdered.
It's the kind of story that makes you think twice about, like, all those little digital traces we leave behind.
Absolutely. And the way this whole thing played out, it really shows how easily those digital breadcrumbs can be manipulated.
So today we're taking a deep dive into the case of Saurabh Rajput. He was a merchant navy officer, and his story takes a really dark turn.
Yeah, we've been looking into the details of this case, and it's a wild ride, to say the least. There's betrayal, there's some pretty horrific stuff that went down.
So stick with us as we try to untangle this whole thing. It's a reminder that things aren't always what they seem.
Definitely. And that sometimes the darkest secrets are hidden in plain sight.
So this whole nightmare starts with what should have been a happy occasion, right? Sarab's daughter's 6th birthday. February 24th, he goes back to Meerut to celebrate with his family.
Yeah, you can picture it, right? A birthday party, family all together. Seems like a pretty normal scene.
But even from the beginning, there were some things that, looking back, just weren't quite right.
Right, like the fact that Saurabh and his wife, Muskaan, were living separately from his family.
In a rented place. So clearly there were some issues there.
Right. Definitely suggests some tension, some distance between them. And that becomes really important as this whole story unfolds.
Then Sarab drops his daughter off at school. Just a normal, everyday thing for dad to do, right?
Except that we now know that, either right before or right after that seemingly normal act, something truly awful happened.
And then, poof, Sarab vanishes. Just gone.
And when his family asks Muskan, his wife, where he is, her answer is pretty casual.
Yeah, she says, oh, he's just gone to the hills for a few days.
Just a quick trip, no big deal. But of course, it was a lie.
A huge lie. Because the truth is, Sarah was already dead, murdered.
And not just murdered, his body was dismembered and hidden in cement.
It's horrifying.
The level of brutality, the premeditation involved, it's just chilling. And to think, that initial lie, that casual explanation, was just the beginning.
Because here's where things get even weirder. After Saurabh is dead, his family starts getting WhatsApp messages from his phone.
Yeah, think about that for a second. This guy is dead, but he's still seemingly communicating with his family.
Like a digital ghost, it's creepy as hell.
It really is. And it just shows how easily we can be fooled by those little digital interactions. We see a message, we assume it's from the person we think it's from.
But in this case, someone was using Saurabh's phone to keep up this facade, to make it seem like he was still alive.
And they did it pretty effectively, at least for a while.
Like on March 6th, his sister, Chinky, gets a message from him asking about her plans for Holi.
And she says she's coming to Meerut. And he replies that he's out of town, but will be back after the festival.
Just a normal, everyday conversation, except of course it wasn't.
Right, he wasn't out of town, he was dead. But the messages were carefully crafted to avoid suspicion, vague enough to not raise any red flags.
Then a couple days later, Chinky asks if Saurabh has taken his daughter with him.
And he replies that the place I went to is too cold, she would get sick.
I mean, come on, that's just a weak excuse, right? What parent wouldn't find a way to bring their kid along, or at least have a better reason for leaving them behind?
Yeah, that one definitely feels a bit off. Like maybe the person sending the messages was starting to slip up a bit.
And then on March 15th, Chinky messages again, asking when he'll be back.
And the reply is, not sure, have a party planned. A party.
While his body is literally encased in concrete, the audacity of that is just mind-boggling.
It's chilling, really. This complete disconnect from reality, this attempt to maintain this facade of normalcy while doing something so horrific.
But luckily, it didn't last forever. By March 16th, the family is starting to get really worried. Unanswered calls, growing suspicion.
And that's when they finally go to the police.
And that's when this whole house of cards comes crashing down.
Yeah, because the police quickly discover that not only was Saurabh murdered, but Muskaan and her lover, Sahil, had actually gone on a trip to Himachal Pradesh after the murder.
And they were still using Saurabh's phone to post pictures and stuff, like they were trying to rub it in everyone's faces.
It's unbelievable, the arrogance of it. But, that kind of reckless behavior is often what trips criminals up in the end.
And then the truth comes out in a way that is just, I don't even know how to describe it. Muskaan just casually walks in and tells her parents, Mummy, we killed Saurabh.
Just like that. No emotion, no remorse. It's almost sociopathic.
And to their credit, her parents didn't hesitate. They took her straight to the police.
Which, that must have been an incredibly difficult thing to do, to turn in your own child. But they did the right thing.
And that leads to both Muskaan and Sahil confessing to the whole thing. The details are gruesome, to say the least.
Yeah, and then the police had the awful task of actually recovering Saurabh's body. And remember, it wasn't just hidden, it was encased in cement, inside a drum.
They had to use a drill to get to him. That's how determined they were to make him disappear.
It's hard to fathom the level of planning and cold-heartedness involved in all of this.
And here's another thing that makes this whole story even more tragic. Saurabh and Muskaan had a love marriage back in 2016. He actually quit his job in the merchant navy, for her.
Talk about a slap in the face.
Yeah.
He gives up his career for this woman, and this is how she repays him.
It's just heartbreaking. And then, of course, there's Saurabh's daughter. Can you imagine what this is doing to her?
It's beyond words. To lose your father in such a horrific way, and then to find out that your own mother was involved. It's just devastating.
And then there's the motive. Muskaan's parents have said that she and Sahil were struggling with drug addiction.
Which, if true, kind of explains the desperation behind their actions, But it certainly doesn't excuse them.
And on top of all that, we find out that Muskaan had been cheating on Saurabh with Sahil, his supposed friend, since at least 2019.
So for years, he was being betrayed by the two people he should have been able to trust the most.
And he knew about the affair. He even considered divorce, but decided to stay for his daughter.
What a terrible choice to have to make. And ultimately, it cost him his life.
It's just a complete mess. And the fact that Muskaan's parents are demanding the harshest punishment for their own daughter, that says a lot.
Yeah, they're not making any excuses for her. They're basically saying she deserves whatever she gets.
So where does all this leave us? Well, I think it's a stark reminder that behind those seemingly innocent messages we send and receive every day, there can be a much darker reality.
We put so much trust in our digital communication. But this case shows how easily that trust can be manipulated.
It makes you wonder, how well do we really know the people we're communicating with? How can we be sure that what we see online is actually the truth?
It's a really unsettling thought, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's a question worth pondering, because in this digital age, the line between reality and illusion can be very blurry indeed.
And sometimes the consequences of that blurriness can be truly horrific.
So yeah, that's the story of Saurabh Rajput, a story of love, betrayal, and ultimately unimaginable tragedy.
It's a story that will stay with you.
Yeah.
And hopefully it makes you think a little differently about the digital world we live in.
Because sometimes the most ordinary things can hide the darkest secrets.
And that's something we all need to be aware of.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been heavy, but hopefully it's been illuminating as well.
Definitely. Until next time, folks, stay safe out there.